Lenovo's new Legion 5i Pro is a great gaming laptop, but there are some good reasons why you shouldn't buy it just yet. The first reason is that it's just way too expensive right now. It's only just launched in the US, but they're asking nearly $1,800 for the 3050 Ti configuration. Honestly, that feels like kind of a joke when you can easily get an RTX 3060 or even a 3070 gaming laptop for that money, which will perform significantly better. Obviously, the 5i chassis as a whole has some great features, so it is going to cost more than other laptops with equivalent specs. But still, $1,800 for a 3050 Ti? No. Now, it did briefly go on sale just a few days ago for $1,600, but that's still way too much money for a 3050 Ti in my opinion. Look, I know there are a lot of issues with parts availability and prices just getting more expensive, but this just seems a bit extreme. Fortunately, this isn't the first time I've seen this. Many new laptops when they first released tend to just cost more. I'm not exactly sure why, but I'm guessing they might just be taking advantage of people that are going to pay pretty much whatever just to get their hands on the new model. Because I personally have bought laptops from other brands like Dell straight as they came out so that I could review them as soon as possible, only to have the price drop by $200 to $300 like a week or two later. So hopefully in future this won't be an issue, but right now in late March 2022, the 5i Pro just costs too much money. Now, while a high price is a pretty major feature, it's not the end of the world because the device itself isn't inherently bad and the price can always lower in future. So let's talk about what else I didn't like about the 5i Pro. This is of course a gaming laptop, so we're expecting great gaming performance. And combined with good specs, high GPU power limit, and a mux switch with advanced Optimus, my configuration of 5i Pro does perform well in games. The issue that I've got with it is in many cases it's not that much better than last year's 5 Pro with lower tier 3070 that also has a lower wattage. And not to mention last year's 5 Pro had slower X16 DDR4 memory, which did negatively affect game performance. I do just want to interrupt and mention that although this newer model is DDR5, it's still X16 memory. However, as I've shown in this video here, that's not actually a problem with DDR5 memory. Long story short, we get basically the same performance in games with DDR5 memory, whether it's X8 or X16. It just doesn't matter like it did with DDR4. Alright, so if the gaming performance is similar to last year's model, why don't you just buy last year's model? To be fair, in some games the 1% lows were better with the new Intel 12th gen CPU, so less dips in performance. But the difference in average FPS in many cases wasn't too different. Now, although I haven't found new 2022 CPUs to make that big of a difference when it comes to gaming in laptops, outside of gaming and content creator workloads or other tasks that benefit from more threads definitely do see a boost. And the i7 in the Legion 5i Pro is able to run up to 90 watts in a sustained workload. So in tasks that do benefit from more CPU performance, it's offering exceptional results. And hey, maybe that's worth paying for if time is money and you're doing something like content creation. But purely just for gaming, and considering this is meant to be a gaming laptop, it doesn't really seem worth it. If you're after good battery life, then you're probably going to want to look for the AMD Ryzen 5 Pro version and not this Intel 5i Pro version. Now, AMD are only offering us 8-core 16-thread processors this generation, so Intel will definitely do better in both single and multi-threaded workloads. But if you need battery life and good performance on battery, AMD is probably the way to go. Now, something else with this year's 5i Pro is the Wi-Fi antennas used to be on the back, and now they've moved them to the front. And I did actually do a Wi-Fi speed test with my hands on the keyboard as if I was using it while typing, and I found that just doing that would dip the speed by 10%. So not a major difference, and it did still work fine, but I suspect this probably wouldn't be an issue with last year's model purely because the antennas aren't at the front where your palms will be resting, and they're at the back. Unfortunately, I didn't test last year's model while having my hands on the keyboard, so I can't fairly compare that, but it would make sense. I mean, your arms are like, what, mostly meat and water? That's going to block Wi-Fi signals if you're directly above the antenna. Unfortunately, there's still no fan control with this year's 2022 models, but Lenovo have mentioned that they're looking at adding that. I did actually ask if they were planning on bringing that to older 2021 models, and they basically said maybe, but it'll depend on if there's time and if they think it's worth spending the resources. But the 2022 models are the priority, so maybe, maybe not. Now, although fan control would be nice, honestly, this thing was running so cool even under combined CPU and GPU stress tests, I don't think you really need it. It's not critical, but at the same time, I always say having user choice is best, so might as well include it and give you the choice to run the machine how you want it. The cooling is also improved this year. This heat pipe wasn't there last generation, so that's something new, and the fans have also been improved. Another small improvement with this year's 5i Pro is that the gigabit Ethernet port on the back is now facing the preferable way. You can now easily pull out the cable without having to lift the machine up, because in last last year's model, the Ethernet port was the opposite way. Another small change is the Type-C port on the back, which can be used to charge the laptop, supports up to 135 watts now. Last year it was 100 watts, so better charging now. Now don't get me wrong, this year's 5i Pro is a great gaming laptop, and there are some nice small improvements over last year's model. I said last year many times that the 5 Pro was one of the best gaming laptops available in 2021. And I mean, if it's already doing most things well, there's only so much they can improve upon. So I can at least appreciate that Lenovo aren't trying to fix what isn't broken. So yeah, definitely some nice updates to this year's 5i Pro. Just not enough big changes to make it worthwhile compared to last year's model, which is cheaper. Especially if you're just gaming, where the difference is even smaller. Basically, we just need the price to come down so that it actually becomes competitive. And when that happens, this year's 5i Pro is definitely a gaming laptop that I can recommend. But yeah, seriously, just don't pay $1,800 for a 3050 Ti. Check out my full review over on the main channel next to find out absolutely everything about this gaming laptop, as I go into far more depth there. Or this one, if you just want to see how well it performs in 12 different games at all setting levels. So I'll see you in one of those next. Oh, and of course, make sure you're subscribed for future laptop videos like this one.